they think much more beyond it, right? Whereas before all these organizations came here, people were here, millions of people were on the continent for a long time, and there hasn't been like, massive populations wiped out by starvation or anything, because they were actually looking beyond the hands, So
You seem quite informed about many things, and it seems as if you're also very tech savvy. Have you used any of the AI like ChatGPT recently?
I understand ChatGPT very well. I wouldn't use it because as what we're speaking of right now, ChatGPT is almost like dead aid. What it's going to do, in my opinion, is interfere with, cognitive thoughts from human beings. It's sort of like instead of figuring out the problem yourself, you rely on an AI system to give you the thoughts and formulate your thoughts on paper for you. And I think that takes away from creativity. For example, one of the situations that most people have been concerned about for a long time is I started with art. I'm an artist first before anything else, whether it be carving, painting, all those things. And, it started to be a situation when you go to the flea market, people go on Saturdays and Sundays in Toronto to buy their, portraits for the walls.
Yeah.
And then you started to see a lot of digital photos of things created
Like
by
replicas
created by the computer that, it doesn't cost anything to replicate. But then art takes a long time, and art is a thing that, it doesn't bring in money so fast. By the time you finish a painting in, let's say, a matter of weeks or maybe months, someone could just replicate, 300 copies and sell them all at the flea market in one day and make a profit. And the naked eye from the average consumer is not going to be able to tell the difference, right? And using things like ChatGPT, we'll see what the future holds. Because when we were younger, I think our parents were concerned about going from the abacus to the computer, right? We started off using the abacus to do our calculations, and then we went to the calculator, right? And they were concerned that it was going to make children worse in math. And I think if you look, I can't speak for everywhere, but if you look at the mathematics across the board in North America, the grade is really down, right? The grade is really down, and a lot of tutors are employed now trying to get children to an acceptable level. It came to a point where they even lowered the grade expectancy in order to make students qualify. So I'm not sure if ChatGPT is going to deal with cognitive thoughts from human beings to that effect. But in an Orwellian, foreshadowing, that's what it looks like.
I'm quite optimistic and interested in what it can bring. But let's see. I think there's scope for creativity and innovation to work alongside that. And I think as long as we all keep an open mind and an open mind towards possibility, we never know. Let's see. But what I wanted to ask you is, what do you see as agricultural challenges and opportunities in Africa? What do you see are those challenges and opportunities in agriculture at the moment?
It's a difficult situation. If I saw it, I think the issue would be solved already, because there's a lot more people brilliant than myself that are observing and studying these things. But right off the bat, electricity is a situation, and also equipment. Solar pumps, solar lights, and equipment. There's a lot of people, for example, because of the whole climate change scenario, who are their farms are going to suffer. A lot of average everyday farmers, because the cost of the machinery that you're going to need to create forced irrigation is going to be big. Because if you're in this country, right, where we're in for a long time, I've been around for a few years, and one of the things that most of the farmers say is that the rains are not as predictable as they used to be, right? It's changing. That's what they keep saying. Yeah. So a lot of people, if you don't have forced irrigation to dig wells, to pump water, how are you going to be able to make it, Because right here, in a place that has most of the arable land in the world, this is where you're going to see the consequence of climate change in the north getting much warmer.
So what specifically are you doing in agriculture?
Well, specifically what me and my team are doing is trying to make sustainable communities through utilization of the lands in order to make sure that they're able to support themselves rather than relying on aid and so many organizations making stringent contracts with them in order to give them money to produce what they have to do.
Why?
Well, because I think that this is what will save not just here but everywhere else. And I think if it can be done here, it can be done in a lot of places that have access to a lot more resources and technology. So to me, this is the ground zero. So, it's sort of requiem of a dream. Once you create it here, you can certainly go and, create a mold in a lot of other places.
In scale.
Yeah.
So do you see any opportunities there that can support agriculture?
Oh, definitely. I think one of the things that has to occur is partnership between, the local people and a lot of mom and pop shops. I think corporations work alongside the government, which can be very interesting, depending on what country you're in and what situation you're in. But I would encourage them to also work with locals who have large-scale land. For example, you will run into some individuals here who are from particular kingdoms, whether it be Nyamkoli or Baganda or what have we, and there's some individuals who have as much as, I was playing squash with a gentleman in the club over there, and he told me he had 4 square miles of land in the north.
Wow.
Now for me that's unheard of, and that was passed down.
And that's all his land?
That's all his land. Yeah, so there's no one who knows he has that. If I wasn't playing with him and, exchanging certain informations, I would have never known. He wasn't the first time I played with him. I played with him for about 3 years, and he only through an unplanned conversation that it came out. So there's an individual who is trying to find a way, and he's not affiliated with any organizations, but this land could benefit people in a lot of places. For example, when you look at people from cold climates, let's say Canada, northern Canada, where of course everyone in Canada lives around what's called the 45th parallel, right? That's the golden horseshoe that cuts into the USA, New York, Dakota, and such places, because the north is very cold, right? Though it's a lot of land. You look at Canada, the land is so big, but the population is less than Uganda. Right? So what occurs there is it's a scientific place where they don't have a lot of organic foods because, to feed that population, you need chemistry because the rate at which people consume compared to the rate at which things grow is absolutely not sustainable. So the results later on is, in my opinion, phenomenon such as diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and such things from, preservatives that prevent food from dissipating the way it's supposed to once it goes through the system.
That's very interesting.
So what I am looking at is to get individuals, which I have already, from over there to be able to partner with some of the farmers here and open up a trade situation where, they can at least assist the farms here in modernizing with their resources and be involved in a trade system where, there is fair trade value so that the primary industry usually suffers in fair trade value because people usually just take right from the ground and give it to a manufacturer who knows how to make, tertiary products. In the secondary industry, they produce tertiary products that cost more than, way more, maybe, 10 times more than what they're paying the farmers. I know that from my experience in Grenada, that's in the Caribbean, the Lesser Antilles. Now, we used to grow up bringing big bags of nutmeg over our backs, going on steep slopes.
Did you grow up like that, doing that?
Yes, 10 years,
Wow.
And then when we brought it to the market, some of the nutmeg would be spoiled. They would put it in water to see which has oil. If some float and some stay at the bottom, they will tell you what's good and what's not good, right? And sometimes they bring a bag that's so big and they get like $2.43. And it was unbelievable. And then I use this example because some ingenious individuals decided to make nutmeg syrup. So with the nutmeg syrup now, in my opinion, is better than the maple syrup and the angemina, which we put on the pancakes. And the nutmeg syrup, one small bottle of nutmeg syrup is like $12. So, the production aspect, in the secondary industry is what I think places that have so much agriculture, like Africa, South America, the Caribbean, and places like Bangladesh and such, have to concentrate on, you know, and make their own products in order to get more partnership and fully be involved in the economic system throughout their lands. Because if not, what happens is the lands just become a place for possibly hotels. You know, in the Caribbean, a lot of arable land have been turned into hotels because they're islands, so they don't have a lot of space. So tourism is their main money bringer. So throughout the world, we're seeing, because of the business choices and what they see as fast available to give them sustainability, a lot of people are looking into situations of, you know, building car factories and such, and destroying lands and selling off lands that they have to participate in the money income of other industries. And then when they do get that money, they have to look for food anyways, which is becoming scarce because of the death of arable land across. So it's a circle where, for some reason, people are not seeking the simplicity of it to understand that later on we eat now, but not too much people are thinking, in my opinion, of, you know, their fellow tribe members who are to be born, their family members who are to be born and come up. Because it's one thing if we eat well and we sell our family's land, but what about the family who's going to be born after us? We have to think of a legacy on a worldwide basis to protect, you know, sustainable foods.
I really love that concept, and I really love what you're saying there. There's two things that really stand out for me, and one, it's almost a regeneration and thinking of the next generation with future care in mind. And when I listen to your story about the nutmeg, I cannot help but think how many products or how many things we can actually rethink that might be securing a more sustainable future. But you spoke about something called mom and pop shops.
Mom and pop shops is is just a slogan for individual sole proprietors or small businesses. Whereas we have over here, you see how they have Giant Tiger and Woolworth. Those are chains that got defeated by more successful chains such as Zellers, Walmart, Costco. Those are big grocery chains where they go into a town, and if they leave and shut down, the town goes completely dead and bankrupt.
Because of the grocery store?
Yeah, because they're superstores that take up so much land, and then they bring so much traffic because of the groceries that come in and goods that come in. So these stores now, I don't know what a variant would be in the UK, but these stores usually undersell the mom and pop shops, and they kind of compete with them, right? So then the mom and pop shops, they tend to shut down as a result because of the big corporations that come and, you know, they monopolize the grocery industry. So the mom and pop shops, those are individuals who are who might not be able to pay the amount that the corporations are willing to pay, but they will certainly bargain with the local farmer better. It's sort of like, you know, Kijiji or some sites that are like barter or even eBay. eBay came up as a result of people not wanting to pay full price for brand new, right? Seeking that bargain. The corporations, it's a straight standard that they're dealing with. And then the tricky thing about it is, even if they were offering an amicable price, you don't have enough for what they're asking. Because let's say you have a corporation, let's say a corporation that makes bread, and the amount of flour that they're going to ask for, a local farmer who maybe has, you know, 10, 12 acres of wheat is not going to be able to supply them, right? So cooperatives have to be formed where they can meet the, possibly meet the standard amount to be able to sell to them. But with the mom and pop shops dealing, depending on what produce it is, individually, they can certainly bargain where the farmer also benefits and where they also benefit and can stay competitive with the corporations and also supplying the local people who are buying from them also.
And I think most of them are not really concepts, right? But interesting thoughts that you're bringing to the table. Something else that I heard you say in a previous conversation that led me to this question, and I'm curious whether you think there's scope for social investment in African agriculture.
Absolutely. You know, especially there's an interesting situation that occurs in Africa, right? That the book Dead 80. I'm sorry, I can't remember the lady's name who wrote that book. That she covered, but she didn't capsulize it in the way that I am going to right now. But a lot of the people in, especially a lot of the impoverished countries. Part of the problem is they know how to receive, but they have no idea how to give.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there is a saying from a musician I believe he's from Memphis, MJG, and he said you need to stop sticking your hand out and start to fold them, right? And I always carried that with me. And over here, everyone wants to receive from, whether it be the Red Cross, from the UN, this corporation, that corporation. Now, once they receive, paying the workers, it's an inert problem that I've seen here. Paying workers, fairly sharing the profits. This is a problem. Sort of like I've seen a situation where in Ghana a few years ago, there was 26, something to the sum of, I think, 26 million was given to somebody in order to fix the roads. And nothing was done and no one went to jail. So once they receive, the disbursement is not there. And I think we're leaving a bad example, because going into the realm of social justice, you need to reinvigorate the idea of social justice. If everyone just wants to receive, who is the new generation of people who are going to say, hey, there's trouble over there, and possibly risk their lives to go over there and live with people and take time out of their lives to help individuals with their resources?
But now I'm also curious, because I think there are so many people out there, personal investors or private investors, that are eager to just invest into Africa, not knowing that they can also do a lot of harm. So what would your advice be to private investors or people that just want to hand the money to that hand that is sticking out? What can be a practical approach or a consideration before you just feed the empty hand?
Social justice minded. In anything that you're doing, pay one of your executives to make the trip. Go see what's happening over there. Me, myself, I'm here because in my circle of colleagues, I've been sent to Uganda. We have people who've been sent to Ghana, people who've been sent to Ethiopia. You need to see what's actually going on the ground, and partner with the people where you're going. And the people who are eager to give, I don't know that they're eager to give, because you see, there's two ways about this. I understand the Western system very well of capitalism. It's a requirement for some people to save their organizations in order to give. So that's why you see a lot of blind money also landing here in order for them to settle their differences tax-wise and relations to the governments, right? So in that way, a lot of people can get spoiled because they're in that system of receiving just to satisfy a tax burden for corporation in the West. And then those people, there's no one to hold them accountable for their, requirements to appropriately dispense the funds or appropriately share it out to help the people who it's meant to help. For those who are really, have it in their heart to give, I believe that they will try to make the trip or try to make some contact with people to make things happen, because there are organizations that I know of and heard of that, everyone is a middleman anyways, but the best way to assure your situation, if you're in an organization, it doesn't cost anything. It costs as much to go to Africa as it costs to go to Cuba on vacation, So, take a plane, come over. Things here are not as expensive as the West. You can make it happen. You can get support from friends and sit down and see what's going on. Call some organizations before, say, hey, I'm coming, I'm interested in this and that and that. I'll cover my own expenses, but just show me some things and impress me. You have to try the spirits. You have to try the spirits and see what they're really about. You can't just expect things to, I mean, even people who are locals here, for example, there's people who are locals here and in any country, and they tell me stories of they've been living in the West for a long time, and then they sent monies to family members to take care of things for them. And when they came back, they found air. You know, so you know,
it was fresh air.
Yeah, they just found air or whatever they asked them to do. It wasn't accomplished, and I think that happens in a lot of places. So those who are really eager to make it happen, contact people like yourself, myself, the appropriate people who've been doing it for years, who have reputation and who have an online presence where they can be held accountable for things that go wrong. So
credibility and accountability.
Precisely.
Is very key. I have another question. I didn't plan to ask this, but I'm curious on your perspective on this as well. Do you think that Africa is really this helpless continent in dire need as it is portrayed to the Western world?
I think Africa will save the world. All right, I think Africa will save the world. I don't see it that way as how the question you asked is painted as a place in dire need. I think people have always been here and will continue to be here. Polls show that while in other places such as Japan, the West, look, Russia a couple of years ago was paying $700 to have children. Right? If you have 2 children, they'll give you $300 and then $700 to have 2. There are places that are compensating people in order to have children. Here still, people on a large basis have 4 to 6 children. And this continent, they said, I think by 2055 will host 4 billion people. So they're going to overtake what China was and what India currently is. So, you know, people have to be, mathematic. When you say that, okay, cholera and malaria and such things are interfering and destroying populations, there have been so much organizations giving aid here for so much diseases and virus, and bless the AIDS organizations, because I've seen the work that they've done in Rakai, and it's really amazing, But if that's the case, that the place is in so much danger, how come the population in the places that are supposedly helping them went down while Africa is rising?
So interesting.
Right? So there is something mathematic here that people have to think simplicity and look at what they're saying, because over here, when there is a lot of confusing information online, they will say that, I've read some places that they said that, hey, 90% of the population survive on less than $5 a day, and 95% of the population survive on less than $10 a day. Look, all of that stuff is misleading information.
I was curious about that.
It's misleading information. Come to Africa and see what's going on. I've went to some places here and ordered a plate of food that cost 50 cents. Right? And the plate was bigger than any plate I can get in a restaurant in the West.
Well, we passed the local market and it was beautiful seeing all the local ladies on their smartphones.
Yeah,
so
yes.
That in itself is very questionable.
Of course.
But that's really interesting perspective, and I haven't thought about it in that way as well. So would you say it's safe to say that we should stay away from social justice in Africa?
No, social justice is necessary, and you have to teach the next generation to be social justice minded, because what has to happen is a mind shift in what is valuable, agriculture wise. And the real danger for the West.
What would that look like? What would you say if you have to say, okay, this is how I think social justice mindset would look like or should look like through the lens of agriculture? How would you frame that?
Appropriate courses, the need of permaculture, right? Not using big machinery to do farming, so that those who are not, having a lot of financial abilities still know and understand a way in order to, grow food for themselves without being able to hire a tractor, which might cost how many shillings or dollars per week, per acre and such, right? And that would do with organizations. Spreading, teaching permaculture, teaching people how to grow things, teaching people how to use and reuse things. And I think it has to happen where even in the Western Hemisphere, how many classes are teaching anything in terms of like the theory of decency, in terms of taking care of the earth and taking care of people and sharing, right? It's very capitalistic, the education that is back west, and everyone is taught, mostly 80% is taught to become a consumer than, you know, a producer. And the danger that the West has that they do not realize is that once the mind state shifts, where many of the Africans realize the value of their lands and what they're able to do with their lands, it's going to be trouble. You're not going to be able to trade with them so much no more. Now the price goes up. Yesterday's price isn't today's price because now there's knowledge.
And you foresee that happening?
Oh, it's happening. It's happening because, you know, the next generation, a lot of them their parents have went to the West. They have returned now. And then what occurs since they have returned, they're teaching their children. So a lot of people are becoming very wealthy and not needing to go to the West to do it. Right? You look at the gentleman over in Nigeria, I'm not sure of his name, but he created this big cement company, right? Where he became a billionaire, and what he does is produce cement. Some other places, look at it's not Algeria. There is a country in North Africa, and they export a lot of fertilizer. You know?
Natural fertilizers?
Natural fertilizers,
organic?
Yeah.
Wow.
All over. So things are occurring here with the emergence of a lot of people see it as a war-torn country, what have we, but Congo is a danger to the success of corporations in the West. Once they get it together over there, their landmass and, you know, the richness of the soil in East Africa, from Congo stretching out to, you know, the ocean, the Indian Ocean, former Nubian Ocean in the east of Kenya, it's going to be a problem because they have no need. I'm seeing individuals here who are doing farming, and they were thinking of making partners to export to places like Europe and such. And now they're realizing, for example, corn, which they call maize, especially after the COVID and all the restrictions was there. They realize now Uganda now is shipping so much corn to places like Malawi, right? Zambia, and they're making so much profits and not having to pay heavy tariffs and having to travel so far with their produce in order to make money. Now that framework is going to be passed over to the other crops, pineapples, dried mangoes, you know, and you see it occurring where the West did something that I think the Caribbean in particular missed out on, and they have to learn from, and Africa is going to learn from, because we are mimics of what we see. And when you look at the emergence of crops, right? They used to tell your parents that money doesn't grow on trees. To the contrary, money grows on trees, and it always has. And when you look at marijuana, let's say in the 80s, when, you know, I'm growing up, in the 90s, if you got caught with, you know, 5 grams of marijuana, you get a beating from the police, you end up in jail, you get a criminal record, right? You see now President Biden recently passed a bill to take away, you know, convictions for marijuana use in the USA, because most of the penal system, people got, you know, 30, 40 years for marijuana. And since the 70s, Peter Tosh of Bob Marley and the Wailers has been saying legalize it. It's good for glaucoma, it's good for AIDS, it's good for cancer, and things of that nature. Growing up in the Caribbean, I was always hearing this music. So what occurs now is the West now turned marijuana into $1 billion and growing business. While the place where it was, you know, the theory was originated from in Jamaica, was putting people in jail, right, for many years. And now that they're becoming smarter and saying, wait a minute, maybe it should be okay to hold some marijuana. Well, now it's too late, because the companies that turn it into a business are now years and decades ahead of you. So you now are not going to be able to make back that same money. So now you started the situation, and now you're buying from countries that originally never had it and never promoted the situation. So what is occurring here is people are going to learn that packaging is a thing technologically that is advanced in Africa. You know, I went into the mountains somewhere here, very far, and there was a man who had organic honey in bottles. The only reason I didn't buy it from him is because he did not have a cork and I couldn't drive as far as I was going with it. So now things like that, if that individual is able to have some machine that packages the honey and is able to seal it appropriately, he has a sale. So technology is growing and people are using it, and they're going to continue to use it to give themselves business and expand their own business. So it is happening here. It is being realized. And I think the reason that it hasn't fully caught on here, because it's impossible. Here is too big. It's too big. The actual scope of Africa, you could fit North America, Europe, and then some into the entire continent. So it's not what it looks like on the world maps that they show. So, you know, it's not on in a broad basis like that, but it's happening, and people are going to be able to create their own corporations here in the future. And matter of fact, corporations are moving here because they see it easier to start their situation here and ship a whole product instead of taking piece and putting it together on the other side.
Interesting. I heard from Charles, he was saying that I think in Kenya now, if you seed save, you can get prosecuted for that, because they're pushing for big companies like Monsanto and so on, so that if you privately seed save, you get a fine.
Yeah, and they will. You see, everything is the beauty and the terror of Africa is that everything is possible. And what I mean by that is, you could practice such arbitrary laws here. You can do that and actually survive that way. You could prevent some people in a village, maybe 100 kilometers north or east, and say you guys are not allowed to grow, you know, any bananas for a while because we need to hike up the price, and we need the Western region to be able to sell the bananas, and they have more prestige. So we're stopping you guys from growing. You can get away with those things, and you know. This is what happens. You know, the idea of Monsanto situation, and from what I see, from my education, not what I've seen on the ground, but you look over in India, and so many farmers have gone bankrupt because of the chemistry involved in seed production, whereby if you use seeds for one season, you're not able to use it for another one, or the next season that you might need a new variant of that seed in order to grow what you need. Yeah. So such things. So
it creates a lot of dependency.
A lot of dependency.
Because you cannot use those seeds again.
And you see, the thing is, it's crossing two worlds. It's one theory, but it's crossing two worlds. Where this might be possible in the United States, they have bailout systems for farmers. Farming is rarely successful in the USA. Most farmers are bailed out by the federal government when there is a hurricane, flooding, and such like that. Farmers over here don't have that benefit. It's sort of like in the West, there is a maternity leave when you have an infant for, let's say, about 12 months to 24 months. Over here, the women have children. No one is paying you or giving you any money, right?
It's almost like there's a maternity leave for farmers.
There is.
But if you have your baby, your farm as a baby here, there's no maternity leave.
There's none. There's none whatsoever. So when you interject a company that's doing what Monsanto is alleged and shown in some cases to do, there is no recourse for the people. And then what occurs is those people, their only recourse is to sell their arable land to someone who's gonna, demarcate it for a different purpose. So we lose in the long run, because something that was being used to create agriculture for people to eat is now being used for a completely different purpose. So, protection of seeds and the right to preserve seeds, I liken it almost to Apple's situation in New York City, the lawsuit, the right to repair, right? So in the right to repair, if you're familiar with it, there was a situation where if you tried to repair your iPhone in a store that wasn't Apple certified, they would brick it, right? They would just brick it so you wouldn't be able to use it again. And then the lawsuit went on and they made some variations where people now, it's ruled that when you buy the phone, you own the phone. So Monsanto is saying, even though we sell you the seeds and you grow it in your land, we own the seeds, the byproducts of the seeds, and your land. This is what they're saying. So the right to grow and the right to protect your seed, you know, is a situation that these corporations are trying to interfere with because they want to monopolize nature.
Interesting. So before I ask you the last question, if you can, I don't know, name 3 attitudes or values, something that you as a human should bring to survive in Africa, what would that be? What would you say you need this and this and this?
I would say farm.
So what if it wasn't farm? What if it was something internal?
You have to have the zeal. You have to have the zeal of someone who's interested in social justice. You have to have the zeal to be, you know, direct and be hands-on in something that Africa is offering. When you move here, to me, there is possibly 3 reasons why people move to Africa, you know? Love of nature, search of self, and investment opportunities. Love of nature, those who see that this is one of the last places on earth that has such a diverse ecosystem. You look at Tanzania where, you know, you can find mountains with snow on it, to swamps, to valleys, to savanna, to deserts. And this is love of nature. And everyone in the West still likes to have, you know, a pot of flowers. They ask for wood grain on the car because it's something that reminds them of nature rather than the mechanical beast that they're driving, you know? So I think love of nature is one thing. Seeking self, I think that Africa is the final frontier. You come here, you meet so many different individuals. It's a place for everybody. It's a place where the scientists say everyone came from, right? And returning home is, I think, something that is cosmic in human beings. From the beginning of time, when they called here the dark continent, the hearts and souls of mankind is dark. We seek light in the dark, so I think everyone comes here to try to find something, and that they will find their origins and beginnings here, find purpose, even being inspired by seeing the way that nature has been undisturbed for years. You see, in other countries, possibly in the West, we are beings of habit. We wake up in the morning, we go by the clock. Here, the lion grows up as it has thousands of years ago. He dies thousands of years ago without anyone giving any instructions, without reading any pamphlets and no alarms. That is, you know, that is something that is cosmic. And I think we realize that sometimes we want to leave where we are and come here in order to be in that purpose without having a purpose. And then the last bit of it, I would say, is the financial aspect. Of course, since the beginning of time, we know that places like France, the Americas and such have been, you know, made rich by this continent and continue to. Just the other day, they found, I think, 17 trillion worth of gold here in Uganda, right? 17 trillion worth of gold. They have the biggest refinery in East Africa being built in Uganda. They say the Congo still has trillions of resources left, despite how much King Leopold, you know, the Germans, the Americans, the Chinese, the Russians who are in there right now, how much that they have taken and brought all the way to Silicon Valley in California to power their, you know, gadgets and such. And it still has so much more, it seems impossible. So anyone who is of a capitalistic mind, this is a logical place. This is a logical place to make a startup and really be able to launch. So those 3 reasons, Africa is providing a launching point for everyone around the world to become something, whether it be, you know, for profit, whether it be to find themselves, or whether it be for love.
I really like the word zeal. I think I want a t-shirt that says, I like your zeal.
Of course.
Well, I'll credit you on that one though. My last question is, what can an alternative partnership look like for the future of Africa?
An alternative partnership. That's difficult, you know? I think an alternative partnership, and what I'm going to say is more of an ideal than a reality because of the capitalistic nature of the rest of the
Remember,
world.
Africa is where you can do you never know, right?
True, true. You can do so many things here indeed. I would say one where people are face-to-face partners. Face-to-face partners with the individuals you're trading with or who is sponsoring you, and respective opinions. You know, I think the alternative situation for Africa is what I said at the genesis of this conversation. Time to stop sticking your hand out and start to fold them, right? Learning to give back because they have so much, right? So it's a strange thing where they have so much, but they keep on asking for more. So, you know, in Africa, as Africans, we have to learn to be able to give back and save the rest of the world with the things that we have by dictating some of the partnerships that are being forged that will benefit everyone on a more larger scale.
Wow. Well, in closing, if you can look to the camera and if you just want to give a shout out of advice to other African farmers or to other farmers in Africa that might resonate with this conversation, go for it.
Well, I would say continue doing what you're doing. There is obstacles in all forms of life, but there is no substitute in owning your own land. You don't own your own land, someone else will own it for you. Then they will be your landlord and you'll end up in a feudal situation, if you know what I'm saying. So stick to your land, don't sell your family's land all of it away, and keep on grinding and put faith in the earth. It's written that he who tills the soil will receive bread. Him who chases after vain individuals will find poverty. Yeah.
Beautiful. Whoa, look at me getting goosebumps from your words. Whoa, what an interview.
That's actually Proverbs number 18.